So all kinds of things happening in the world, right? Even here in my complex. That's right. I'm over here in my apartment complex. And yes, there was a Durham incident with the Durham police that took place. Well, actually, it took place all over the town of Durham. But yeah, folks were running around and catching up with a gentleman who was apparently had a stolen car and a number of other things. So that's the kind of things that I woke up to or dealt with on yesterday and all in that space. So actually, a good friend of mine called to make sure that I was all right and that nothing had happened to yours truly. And as y'all can tell, I'm here. So nothing happened. So at least not to me, but now to the gentleman that got caught and to the officers that were involved in that shooting. Well, that's a whole nother story. So I think they even got placed on administrative leave because apparently that is the common policy when there's an officer involved shooting and all in that space. And like I said, I do think that the gentleman had a stolen van or something like that, and he was running around and actually got caught sleeping twice in the neighborhood. And the last time was, I believe, in my neighborhood and all in that kind of way. But that's neither here nor there in terms of national and international politics. But there's all kinds of things happening in that space and all along those ways and everything. So definitely, we've got a gentleman that's going to be tapped to oversee the Biden documents, and folks are trying to figure out who is Robert Hur, because apparently that's who's been tapped as special counsel to oversee these documents and all along those lines. And there are some folks that are saying that this isn't as bad as what went on with Trump, but it's still bad. And we're going to see what my esteemed panel has to say about that and what's going on in this way also. And of course, we're hoping that none other than Sasha Starr will join us at some point so he can share what's going on in Russia and in that war with Ukraine and all in that space. Because as a matter of fact, Russia has claimed control of the salt mine town Soledar. And I'm not sure how important Soledar is to that whole war, but I'm sure that Chris Greco may have some ideas in that space and all along those ways. So we'll see what is going on in that way and all in that kind of space. By the way, we did have some very sad news in the world of entertainment because Lisa Marie Presley has passed away at 54, and we do know that that was the daughter of Elvis Presley and all in that way. So that was some of the sad news that we heard from the world of entertainment. And of course, she had a very interesting life. I want to say she was the one that was married to Michael Jackson, and of course was the daughter of none other than the legendary Elvis Presley. And that is another one of those sad deaths that has happened in the world of entertainment, because we also know that we recently lost the rock legend Jeff Beck. So those are two sad news from the world of entertainment and what's going on in that space. And then we've got some other news that is taking place. And of course, we'll get to some of that as well. And I've got a video that I'm going to bring up also very shortly, because I know that folks are going to be very interested in the video. It just have some narration to it and all in that space. So when I bring up the panel, I'm going to see if I can't bring up the video as well, because I'm sure that folks are going to have some interesting thoughts around the video, since it involves some people that are connected to this lovely show and all in that space. And who knows, maybe we're the ones that helped cause the trouble. So after I bring the video in, I'm sure Shaquille will have some thoughts, as will others, about this particular video and all along those lines. By the way, if you're wondering about some of the other news that is going on, the Idaho murder suspect says that he felt they're saying that he felt no emotion and little remorse as a teen. And, oftentimes after these things happen, that's when they start analyzing the folks' mental health back when they were kids and other times of their life and all in that way. So it'll be interesting to see why he was not feeling remorse as a teen, what he was doing as a teen, and all in that kind of space. And by the way, if you're wondering what's going on with the Trump organization, it was fined $1.6 million after conviction for 17 felonies, including tax fraud. So that just came up in the news recently as well. And apparently another House Republican has called for George Santos to resign. Representative George Santos says he will resign if 142,000 people ask him to. So I guess that they're going to get a whole petition going to see if they can't get those 142,000 people to do exactly that. And we're going to see if that happens or doesn't happen. And there's all kinds of weather-related things going on. So I know there's been weather in California, and apparently there's weather in the South as well, because 7 are dead in Alabama and Georgia after tornadoes and severe storms ravaged the southeast. And the Florida Coast Guard is asking for help with the migrant surge moments after the White House made certain accusations and all in that space. I know that last week on A Good Ship Happens, a show that we air right here on Pod TV, we actually showed a video of some migrants being rescued by Captain Kate McCoy, who's one of the few women captains that are out there manning cruise ships and all in that line. And definitely it was interesting that she put out her video on Instagram, and we had that as one of the clips of things going on in the cruise industry from last week, because I think that happened like maybe about a week or two ago and all in that space. But definitely it was very interesting to share that news with none other than Cindy Bertram, who does that show for us and with us and all in that kind of way. So we're going to get to some of these news stories and have some other thoughts as well. By the way, I know some folks out there, we were talking about the 1% and the 0.00.1% and all in that way. And some of the folks are trying to get to that percent because what is going on? The Mega Million draw is actually today. It's the second largest in history. So the number is going to be for a $1.35 billion jackpot. And they're even giving you odds on the best states to do that if you're going to go for that in that sense. So it'll be interesting to see how many folks are going to be running to get that $2 ticket and all along that kind of space. So I'm very interested to see what's happening in that way and in that world and all in that kind of way. So I'm going to bring in some of my esteemed panel, and then I'm going to bring in the video that I wanted to bring in as well. But before we get to the video, I'm going to bring in none other than Shaquille Latimer and some others to come on, and we're going to talk about these folks that are going to be running. I'm not going to lie, I might even have to go and get me a $2 ticket as well, even though I've never had any luck with any of those contests. I've been very bad even when I've done fantasy football. I don't know that I've ever won any kind of money in those spaces, but maybe I need to go for the $2 ticket, and maybe I'm going to be the lucky one that gets to $1.35 billion and can even help take this network to a whole nother level and all in that space. Shaquille, you're in the hedge fund space, so do I need to go ahead?
Hang on, Mark. I don't know why you would talk about investing it into the network. What right would you have if you won this money to spend it how you see fit? Aren't you the one lecturing the rest of us about wealth inequality? You should give it all away. You should go live in a tent because apparently there's some sort of, power in poverty. Some sort of pride in poverty. So, having these aspirations, how dare you?
How dare I have those aspirations? How dare I go up? Now, if I got the money, I would probably spend it on some other things. I would definitely be looking out for my nephews. I'd definitely be looking out for some friends of mine that have some business aspirations.
Whoa. Once again, how dare you? You think that you can spend the money on your family? No, you're a left-wing person, remember? You and your family don't matter. Everybody else's families matter. How could you try to improve your own life? What a terrible idea.
What? I can't be giving some money to Dan Worthington and Chris Greco and some of my other friends that are here on the network as well.
You can give it to them. You go buy the ticket, and if you win, it goes to other people who didn't buy the ticket. Who it doesn't go to is you. You have no right to it. Otherwise, I'm going to come over there. I'm going to occupy Mark Lee's house. I'm going to start my own movement. Occupy Mark Lee, and we'll start a protest.
Yeah,
exactly.
You want to occupy my house as well. The house is a total shambles. I don't know if you want to occupy it right now.
It ain't happening, so it doesn't really matter. You might as well just give me the $2. I mean,
Hey,
about 300 million.
Well, if it does happen, I'll just say to you, don't cash your ticket.
It's not going to happen. Don't even worry about it.
Because I can make a deal with you. I'll buy the ticket off you. Because when I go cash the ticket in, I don't have to pay tax on it because I'm not a US citizen. And I'll split the difference between the full amount and the amount that would have been taken in tax. I'll split it with you and maybe charge an extra commission.
I'm going to read the lottery rules. Yeah. Any person who's from Australia, if they purchase this ticket, will be immediately arrested for sedition and treason.
I feel like the IRS is going to order.
Nick, all funds confiscated?
No, what they'll do is they'll arrest him and jail him, a new law just got passed, especially if his name is Shaquille Latimer. He's on the no-fly list, actually, in the United States of America.
He's on the no-fly list and the no-win the lottery list as well. He's on that
It doesn't matter if I'm on the no-fly list. I'll just walk across the southern border. 1.35 billion. I'm there.
They'll welcome you in. They'll welcome you in with open arms.
And then you'll respect your country's laws for that sort of money. I might break a few.
Yeah. then you get some well. Well, we know it's a slow news day in the United States when the biggest thing that they're reporting is the weather. Okay. I mean,
now,
what climate change event happened today?
I don't know. You know what they don't report here is Venezuela. They're making it. It was in the Wall Street Journal. They're making a deal now with Conoco, who they just ripped off for $10 billion. See, Venezuela actually shot themselves in the foot, and then now complain they're bleeding. They have the largest oil reserves in the world, but they have the local anti-socialists who go, "We're just going to confiscate all the oil assets." Okay, so they did.
That sounds remarkably. That sounds remarkably like a particular political party.
They had no clue how these pipes worked. So here you had all these Occupy Venezuelan. We're going to occupy the oil industry in Venezuela. So all these wild-eyed liberals. Now they got the oil rigs, but guess what? They have no idea how it pumps out of the ground. So all of a sudden, the oil industry went to a screeching halt, and Venezuela's economy went straight down the tubes. Seriously,
hey, Nick,
that's what happened.
Nick, hold on a second.
The media, how stupid the liberals are, how stupid they are. They think they can occupy a space, and then all of a sudden, they're a big difference. And by the way, the Republicans are the same way. They go, "I'm going to occupy Congress." They occupy Congress. They don't have a clue how laws work.
You're a Democrat, right?
This is the thing with Venezuela.
We have the idiot Republicans, we have the idiot conservatives, and they all have their agendas.
Those are fighting words.
Hey, Nick.
You also have to fight this open too.
The thing with Venezuela and with countries like it, they're very lucky actually that they still have all of these resources, because all it takes to get those populations, back on track is for a government to come in, lower regulations, let the free market take over, and they will thrive once again. So Venezuela can turn itself around on a dime if they just change the political system.
They don't need the free market. They don't need this free market guard. They need people who know how to run the oil industry.
Nick, I'd be far more concerned about countries that, like we're seeing, the UK, to some degree, the United States, where we've got increasing levels of debt, and we actually have, for the most part, a functioning free market economy. We can all complain about regulations, but we do have a reasonably free economy. So with these levels of debt, and with us, with such a big percentage of our GDP going in interest rate payments, this is a problem. This is a really significant problem. How do you solve that issue? See, with Venezuela and countries like it, you just get government out of the way, all of a sudden the country thrives. What do you do in a place like the United States, United Kingdom, a lot of countries in Western Europe, Germany, France, etc.? What do they do when their economies are already doing well, and yet they've got all these high debt levels? What's their next move? Where are they going?
Hey, speaking of that, and speaking of occupying, I definitely want to get to one of our
videos
I was going to get to. Hold on a second.
You know how to run stuff. It doesn't matter if you occupy the White House. It doesn't matter if you occupy the oil fields. If you don't know how to run those bloody rigs, okay, you can occupy all you want.
Nick, hold on a second. Nick,
okay,
hold on a second.
You're selling Mark Lee short. Mark Lee joined the Occupy movement not because he wanted to make changes to the people that knew what they were doing. No, he wanted to go to people not because he wanted to make changes for people that didn't know what they were doing. He wanted to go after the people that do know what they're doing, right? People like me in the finance industry. Like, goodness.
Hold on a second. Right. Let's be very fair here, because there was another Occupy movement that took place as well, and I want to know what y'all thought about this. And it actually
I thought it was rubbish.
Hold on a second.
I don't even need to hear what you're going to say. I thought it was terrible.
No, hold on a second. But it actually involves something with Dan Worthington.
You're open-minded.
In Dan Worthington's heritage, which is also part of my heritage as well, because there was also an Occupy movement because of tribal land and tribal rights that took place on Mount Rushmore. I believe that was right around the time of the pandemic or right before the pandemic, and all in that space. So I was just wondering, is that all right if the folks are upset because, there was like a whole push to take over the land because apparently it has some oil and some other things in there, and they wanted to do like some fracking and some other kind of things that the environmental groups didn't like, but also the Native Americans didn't like as well, which is why they did like a whole occupy around Mount Rushmore because it's actually tribal land, according to what folks are saying about that part of America.
They're occupying a bunch of rocks. You
Not
know
anymore.
if they do that, you just wait till they run out of food and they'll all leave because they have nothing better to do. The people who occupy stuff are just plain stupid. It doesn't bloody work. They better have brains and know how to work the stuff that they occupy, and they don't. You know,
But speaking of things that don't work,
hold on a second.
Speaking of things that don't work, speaking of things that don't work, hold on. Speaking of things that don't work, speaking of things that don't work, sometimes people will say that a sit-in or a sit-in movement or a movement like that doesn't work as well. But we had a guest on recently and all in that space, and actually I did do another interview with her. I meant to get in touch with Shaquille before it happened, but it was actually yesterday. So I did talk to Medea. She actually did say that there were some things going on in her space and everything in the sense of canceled culture on both the left and the right. And she also said that we needed to listen to both sides of the aisle and all of that. But then she, right after she did our interview with us, she did a action, and the actions are sometimes when you take an action and all in that space. So maybe we forced her to do this action. I'm not saying that it was
the video. Let's watch the video. Yes,
let's watch the video. This is what she did the day after the interview with us. So let's catch the video and see what Medea was
That
like.
was a fantastic framing, and let me pick up if I could.
The framing was actually not fantastic. Right now, the two real security threats to the world are nuclear war and the climate crisis. And unfortunately, Congressman, the way that both the Democrats and Republicans have been pushing us in this war in Ukraine, where we definitely condemn Russia, but we need negotiations. If we keep pouring billions and billions of dollars into this war, we're
Security.
on the brink of a nuclear war. Let's listen to the chair of the Joint Chief of Staff, Mark Milley, who said, seize the moment, go for negotiations. Raise your hand here if you'd like to see negotiations instead of a nuclear war. None of you? Come on, there's got to be somebody.
Actually, I'll take that as the first question because I think it's a good point.
Well, I was asking the audience that actually, but I know, and Michael, I know you're a big cheerleader for the Iraq War and for other wars, so you don't really have a lot of legitimacy when it comes to using diplomacy, not war. But I think let's just put it in the context.
So you don't want to hear any sort of discussion? You just want to talk?
I just want to end my point here, which is to say that it's a shame that 30 Democrats who signed a letter to Biden calling for negotiations were so pilloried by people like you in the Democratic Party.
I didn't pillory them at all.
They withdrew their letter after 24 hours. The Democrats have to get back on board of calling for negotiations and not leave that to the extreme right of the Republican Party like Marjorie Taylor Greene. They shouldn't be the ones with the rational voice in all of this calling for negotiations. Democrats have to step forward, have to put the pressure on the Biden administration and say we need negotiations, not more war.
And here they come.
The real security
is
climate crisis, getting people housed, and not focusing on weapons. We have $880 billion going to war. We need to go to social services.
Jeez.
Well, kick them
So
out.
that was literally the day.
Hey, Mark, that was a great video. That was a great video. 2 thumbs up, baby. And we actually have her on our channel. I can't believe it.
I think you made my
Maybe
point.
she will come back.
Yeah.
She's got a lot
I
more.
think you made my point.
But
Well, now that we've done that, can we show my share screen? I want to show what's going on and what's going on in Ukraine with Sasha's okay.
Just for you, because I've got to pop off. I'm just going to pop off for a couple minutes. I'll just say something real quick.
Go, please.
I'm just gonna repeat what I said the other day. Diplomacy is great. We all want to have the way she framed that question. Would you prefer diplomacy over nuclear war? Of course, we'd prefer diplomacy. Of course, we'd prefer it if that works. But the reality is that peace is won with blood. Peace is won with war, with force, with violence. That's how we get peace. And that's an unfortunate reality. And I think that some of these bleeding heart liberals and these women just don't understand. It takes men who are prepared to risk everything, including their own lives, in order for people to...
May I ask you, would you entertain following question? Would you like to see Russia weakened for the next 55 years and will go out from the world stage with all their nuclear and non-nuclear threats and their energy aggression, which is now over, thank God. Would you like to see that or not?
Do you think that's going to happen through? Do you think that's going to happen through diplomacy?
No.
No, I'm not talking about
what happened on the battlefield.
Diplomacy is a very effective thing, except that when in 1938 in Munich, that diplomacy completely failed, which led to the Second World War. And if Russia is not stopped now, look, Third World War is practically inevitable because the interests of Russia and the West are diametrically opposite. So it's better if you happen Russia than with a strong one. Okay.
The reality is that the leading diplomats in the world are representatives of the countries that are the strongest in the world. Nobody gives a shit about the diplomats coming from, South Sudan. Nobody's paying attention to them. But a diplomat coming from Canada or the US or UK, Germany, France, etc., people are going to listen to them because they're more powerful countries.
No, I think this can even get more local. But before we do that, I want to point. I want my share screen on because I want to show what's going on right now. What's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Belarus. So there's going to be Union. Gosh darn, I forget what the frickin' name is. Anyways, it's Union something, Russia and Belarus. And basically what's happening is, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yep.
So basically what's happening is that this right here that you see on the share screen with the map is the actual places where Russia and Belarus, just some of them, it's not all of them, just some of them where they had Russian military presence in January 2022. Geez, what happened in February 2022? Let's think about that for a second. They invaded Ukraine. So basically what's going to happen is they're going to have all these areas that are going to have Russian presence with Belarus, and they're going to have these training exercises, and the stupid ass people in the United States, specifically the Defense Department and the intelligence community, is saying, it's just an exercise. No worries, no problems. It's just going to be an exercise. Let's take a look at this. There's the Ukraine capital right here, and here's where they're going to be. Let's see what the distance is. The distance is 118 miles. Wow, that's really interesting. And so in other words, a jet can take off from here, hit the Ukraine capital, and come back. And it would be like, you got to be kidding me. Now they have air defense there, but they don't have the Patriots yet. They're getting shipped in now. So that's going to be an issue with any type of missiles or anything else. So you have that. You have an armor location right here. Let's see where the Ukraine air base is. Let's see, it's right there. Let's see, that's 143 miles. So you have armor location here, and let's see, what do we have here? Oh, I know what we have here. Let's just pop in here and just see what this looks like. This is the military air base right here that out of Minsk, where the Russians are going to be. What do they have here? Oh, geez, they got a bunch of helicopters. Okay, so they have helicopters which can do ground support for military aspects. And what else do they have here? Oh, yeah. Gee, I forgot. They got transport aircraft. Some of the biggest transport aircraft in the world they have right here. So, I mean, this is unbelievable. I cannot believe in a million years that the United States or Poland, just say to the troops in Poland, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you up on the northern border. We're going to put you up on the northern border of Ukraine. And we're going to have you sit there and observe the joint Belarus-Russian exercises. We're just going to have you observe them. Just put them right across that northern border. Russia, Belarus, if you come over at all, then at that point, we're going to consider that territorial invasion of the north, and we are going to repel that attack from the north. And I'll tell you what this reminds me of is freaking Korea. When MacArthur said, "Oh, the Chinese, they'll never come in. They'll never come in. That won't be a problem. Won't be a problem." And then they're at the Yalu River, and all of a sudden, 100,000 Chinese come across the border. This is not a good situation. We are doing everything possible to make this whole situation happen again, except from the northern border. And I'll tell you something, Sasha, I don't give a crap how good the Ukrainians are. When you put them in a two-front war, right now they're trying to, the Russians are taking Soledar, Big Thrip. Everyone says, oh, Big Thrip. Well, the thing is, they're doing that for a reason. They want to reposition their troops closer and closer and closer to that Luhansk border. And this is a real issue. And the Ukrainians are doing a great job of trying to hold them back. But you come in from the north, and without any U.S. or NATO repellation whatsoever, Kiev will fall. It'll fall in day. I mean, it won't fall. It won't be defeated, but it'll fall. There's no way that they're going to be able to repel two fronts at the same time. It's really, really scary. And it happened before last year in January. And that's where all these dots came from, was January of 2022. So, Sasha, how are the Ukrainians going to do this? Go,
Okay,
man.
please.
I'm in.
Two corrections. First of all, U.S. was warning. Now, when I'm talking about U.S., I'm not talking about separately Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
I'm talking about U.S. as a country, as any normal country functions, except U.S. In U.S., you have two countries. You have Democrats, you have Republicans, and you have to deal with that. That's fine. So U.S. warned Ukrainians that the war is inevitable and that they must take utmost care of that. And the funny enough, Ukrainians were against this opinion because they believe that this is a propaganda that will just spook investors and civil population and so on. So they didn't take it not seriously enough, but at any rate for what it is. And also, U.S. proposed a couple of days. There was one, the last one before invasion was 16th of February. And when invasion didn't start on 16th of February, as we know, so Ukrainians say, "Oh, come on, leave us alone. We know how to handle Russians. We will negotiate with them and do this and that." So we know the end result. So now we know more or less who we are, where we are, and what's going on. Now I want to tell you about something about Russia, very interesting. I just remember when I was way much younger and just came to Canada, I had a mentor. He was a professor of computer sciences in Toronto University. And I hardly could speak English at that time, but we could communicate. And you know what he told me? I already had a diploma from Soviet University. And he told me, the first thing what I would do if I were you, I would go to university to study humanity, because this is something what is distinctly different from Soviet Union and Western countries. You have to go. I did attend that course in university, and I'm glad I did that. So now when you will take into effect the Russian treatment of Ukrainian civilians, all those horrendous rapes and killings and so on, you understand there is no humanity on the Russian side. Forget about Dostoevsky and Tchaikovsky and Tolstoy and all that stuff. It doesn't help, because this is completely different culture. This is the culture of the upper Russian society of that 19th century, and today's Russians of 21st century. It's the worst that there is to it. It's even much worse than the Soviet Union people, because at least they were cultured enough. They had good education. They had work ethics of some kind. I'm not trying to praise it. However, after most of the people left Russia or Soviet Union in around 90s and 2000, and now they're living in hundreds and thousands a day. So now it's like a negative selection. You have selected the best left, and the war, or in jails, unfortunately, and the worst are now fighting this war, maiming people, and their vision is to go through Ukraine as fast as possible and to go farther to Moldova, Baltic Republic, Poland, and hopefully the rest of the year. Not really hopefully, because of the Ukrainian factor, that's not going to happen. And this is why Chinese are now leaving Putin alone, because they perceive him now as a liar and a loser, because he promised Chinese before the beginning of the war that he will take Kyiv in 3 days, Ukraine in 7 days, and then they will go much farther. So China says, yeah, okay, show us the goods. And where are the goods? They took over this Solidar. It's a village of 10,000 people. You know how many people were killed in Solidar of Russian people? Well, Ukrainians took their heavy losses because they were essentially what happened. Russia put all their efforts into Solidar because they never had any victories in the last several months, period. Absolutely none. So now there are two conflicting reports. One of the Russian War Ministry, Gerasimov, and another one, Wagner's group by Prigozhin. Prigozhin insists that it's only his troops took over Solidar. That was only then who were fighting and became victorious as a result. Now the Russian Ministry of Defense, I would call it Ministry of Attack rather than Defense. So what they're saying is that this is our great Russian victory. We were able to strategize and take over the telecom. It's 10,000 people prior to Russian invasion. Now
it's like Bakhmut, right? Bakhmut the same way. It's a relatively small town.
Bigger.
It's bigger. Okay.
About 80,000 people.
And, okay.
It's a perception that this is very important transportation hub and so on. Whatever it might be. I mean, the Solidar is not helping Russians to take over Bakhmut. It's not going to happen. And even Solidar, we are learning that there are still fights going on. It's not over yet. Although they took over the most of the city. If you can call it a city, 10,000 people prior to the invasion. How many people there are now? Maybe 150, maybe 55. I have no idea what is that.
And since you brought up the Wagner Group, again, on my share screen, I have a place that the Wagner Group has been pretty instrumental in basically killing people to make sure that the mining is done. Gee, where would that be? Africa, the Central African Republic in Kuki. Kuki. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. But basically, yeah, they have a mining. It's a mining area, and the Wagner Group went in there and stiff-armed. I shouldn't say stiff-armed. Basically choked a bunch of people, physically and literally, into making sure that the Russian mining area was kept good. So, I mean, these are people that basically have no qualms, no ethics whatsoever to do whatever they need to do to make their money and to do whatever they do. And if that means killing people, well, then they kill people. It's like, hey, that's the way it goes. It's the old, I hate to use a quote from Prince Harry, but it's old, the old chess pieces, getting rid of chess pieces, where he got really slammed on that one. You can't treat people as chess pieces. And you're I mean, everyone is exactly right. It's peace through strength. It's not peace through just negotiations and diplomacy. I mean, interestingly enough, the one time that we went in with diplomacy to try to prevent something from happening was when the diplomat went in and talked to Saddam Hussein and basically said, Kuwait really doesn't mean that much to us. And the next thing you know, Saddam Hussein goes into Kuwait. So it's a situation where, diplomacy sometimes is the worst enemy. It's you sit back and let me ask you a question. Who here, I don't care where you live, Canada, wherever, Australia, who here wants the police when they come, when somebody's trying to rob you and have a negotiation, say, look, I'll tell you what, if you just give them $10 or $20 or $30, they'll leave you alone. So just give them the $20 and just walk away, and you walk away, and everything. Yeah, it's a reparations for holding the gun at you. But I mean, this is so let's do that. Let's do that in our local lives. If we come, and then you're good, right?
Chris, you reminded me an old story about why Jews are not good bandits. Because when Jews, he's going on the street in Manhattan, he stopped you and he give me all your money. And then he says, well, you don't have to give all the money. Just give me half of the money and you are free to go and I'll let you go or so on. So essentially they're losing half of the pot. for nothing, really. When you can take all of it, you're taking only half. Another idea I'll give you about negotiations, peace negotiations included, it's in the 90s. In the last century, there was negotiations between Israel and Gaza and Palestinian Authority. They negotiated, I think, in Norway at the time. And so finally, the last question was, I think it was Shamir, who was at that time Prime Minister of Israel. So the question was put to him that, okay, so there will be a peace and you have to give such and such land to Palestinian Authority. You know what he said? Sorry, I can't do it. You say, why? Because it's all signed in my wife's name. I have no right to do it. Okay.
And so Putin would love to be able to give Ukraine, but it's all signed in his wife's name. It's nothing he can do. That's or his mistress's name. Wherever she is at this point in time. Yeah. So it goes that way.
The last thing is that she left him. She had enough.
Oh, you're kidding me! Romance. Let's have a Christmas show about it.
He can hire someone else. It really doesn't matter.
But if the reports that we're getting from the New York Times, I know some people here don't believe in the New York Times, but anyway, the reports that are coming in is that the Russians kill the men and rape the women. Okay, when they take over a territory. Now, how do you negotiate when you're being raped? Talk to me. How do you negotiate when a bullet's being put in your head? Talk to me. But, and I didn't spend much time with this young lady. How much experience do you have negotiating? Have you ever been to a mediation? Not a lot, but just have you been to one of them? Have you ever been a mediator before?
Clearly not.
Probably not. Saying, Dan, I've gone through a lot of experience with this stuff, and I'm going like, I believe, but I'm not sure. She has zero experience in mediation negotiation. Now she's going to tell congressmen how to negotiate? Come on.
Hold on a second, Nick. I can tell you for a fact that mediation negotiations is part of what goes on in some of the training in
watch the 9-year and everything. For 10-year sentence.
Every negotiator has to study in Munich, 1938. That's all where it has to start.
Yeah. How the negotiation 1938 goes, Sasha?
Yeah, my concern with Medea's points is that she's not just advocating for negotiations, and a de-escalation of wars, right? That's not what she's saying. She's throwing into that other stuff, which is going to sound very good to young people, especially the Gen Z nut jobs that are currently wandering around colleges at the moment by saying things like, well, we're spending $800 billion a year on the military. That money could be used for, healthcare and this and that. It doesn't work like that. And the US cannot have, the left always makes this argument, the US cannot have no military. It just doesn't operate that way. Healthcare costs 20% of the GDP in the United States. The military spending is 3%. Let's be realistic here. So these sort of claims from her that you should get rid of the military, we'll all live in peace. It just doesn't work that way. Name a country that doesn't have a military that's been able to exist in peace for very long. There isn't one. So this is just silliness.
I want to mention something very interesting. Thanks to this almost $1 trillion budget, U.S. is very well defended against Canada and Mexico. Nobody will try even to think about attacking the United States. However, you could do the same thing with a budget of $50 billion. You don't need $1 trillion. So I'm not criticizing the size of the budget. What I'm saying is that this budget is coming from the overall U.S. foreign policy and U.S. place in the world, which has to be supported by extremely strong military force, because without that, there is no politics, there is no negotiation, there is nothing, there is a vacuum. Then in fact, Canada and Mexico may think about starting attacking U.S. But I
just want to read you something, and I'll tell you what I'm reading in a minute. My name is, I'm not going to tell you the name. I am what you may call a defector from the USSR, and I have a message for you. I love you very much. I love all of you, liberals and conservatives, decadent capitalists and oppressed masses, blacks and whites and browns and yellows, rednecks, and intellectuals. For me, you are the people who created a unique nation, country, and society in the history of mankind. By no means a perfect one, but let's face it, the most free, affluent, and just in today's world. I am not alone in this love. People all over the earth, whether they praise America or bitterly criticize her, look upon you as the only hope for mankind's survival and the last stronghold of freedom. Some may not think in these idealistic terms, but they certainly enjoy the fruits of your civilization, often forgetting to be grateful for them. Millions of people in the so-called socialist camp or in the third world literally owe their lives to America. Now, this is part of a thing called Love Letter to America, which was written by Yuri Bezmenov, I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly, who was a KGB person who actually defected to Canada.
Yes, I know.
Now, if you read that today, many of the things that he talks about in there, like, for example, India buying stuff from Russia or from the USSR, they're all things that are still going on today. And it's very interesting to read it, something that was written 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And it's like you're reading about current events.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
But this is the thing. Whenever I hear all this criticism from Americans about their military expenditure or from other people who blame America for its involvement in international affairs, when Americans say things like maybe we shouldn't be in the business of nation building, the reality is that America is a significant contributor to the Human Rights Charter. So too are the Five Eyes nations. What are we supposed to do as nations? Do we turn a blind eye and say nothing and do nothing when millions and tens of millions of people are in peril, are suffering from violence, are suffering from the whims and fancies of dictators? Is that who we are as people? Because if it's not, then I really think that people need to recognize what our military does for us and have just a little more respect for the sacrifices that those people have made, for the freedoms that we have all enjoyed, not just Americans, but that all of us have enjoyed. I just think that this beating up on America is just not on.
Well,
Shaquille, hold on a second.
Those same two young ladies went to Russia and pulled that stunt there. They spend the next 10 years at least in a Russian prison.
And there won't be anyone trying to get her out.
Years we have freedoms here. That's
no, we don't have freedoms to talk
I would
about
have no problem.
issues.
And okay, let's give them a plane ticket, send them to Russia, and go ahead and pull the stunt over there and see what happens.
But speaking of that,
we'll make
everything, because there were two other issues that I was going to get ready to get to before we got out of here. One of them is actually involving hate crimes here in this area, America, and everything. And we do have hate crimes even here because. Hold on a second.
What's that? Someone disagreeing with someone, Mark?
Mark, hold on. Could you just define what that means? What's a hate crime?
Hold on a second. I'm going to tell you what the hate crime is in this particular case. A New York man pleaded guilty to hate crime charges in a head-stomping death of a Chinese immigrant, and that was part of what happened. What happened on Thursday?
Isn't every crime a hate crime?
Huh?
Isn't every crime a hate crime? Where's the love crime?
Well, that's another part. But wait a minute.
Confused. I love you so much. You know what? I'm gonna smash your head in.
Hold on a second, Lee. They said there was a rise in hate crimes targeting African Americans and Pacific Islanders in New York and across the United States. And part of that was because of the pandemic and the fact that the virus came from Wuhan and some of the areas around there, and there was some of the other things that were going on in that area.
Okay.
So there was definitely this particular individual saw somebody that was actually homeless because I shouldn't say they were homeless because I don't know that, but they were out there gambling, collecting cans to earn money and all in that space.
Mark, I assume that what you want to try and do is catch us all out because the offender was black. Is that what you're trying to play out here?
I didn't say the offender was black. I just said he was Asian. I didn't go there. I just said he was Asian.
The offender was Asian and he attacked somebody who was Asian.
Oh, the offender. I'm sorry. I did not see you said who the offender was who did the attack and everything. Well, I'm getting ready.
Perpetrator, yeah.
Huh?
The perpetrator.
The perpetrator. I understand now what he's asking. I didn't understand at first what he was asking in that sense and everything, but I'm going to try to find out who the offender was because they actually got 22 years for this particular crime. And I'm wondering, is this something that we need to be given sentences to? Gerard Powell, 51, was expected to be handed a 22-year prison Senate, so I'm not sure what Gerard's background is, because I don't even know if they said what his background was in that sense, but they did say
Well,
that
if he was white, if he was white, they would have said it. So presumably he's a person of color. I'll take a bet on that. Let's look it up.
It's a safe bet.
Well,
I just don't understand this whole thing.
They said he was arrested days after the attack and faced multiple felony charges of attempted murder and hate crimes. He had pleaded not guilty at his arraignment.
What's his name? I want to look him up. Powell.
Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell.
Jerome Powell.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not the same one, Shaquille.
Like the head of the Fed Reserve? Is that what you're talking about?
No, Gerard Powell. I said Gerard Powell. I said it wrong. Gerard Powell.
Hey, Mark, has he been on our network before to, talk about?
I'm trying to get everybody on the network. That's my goal, is to get everybody on the network. With
you gotta find these people that just hate people because they have nothing better to do with their worthless lives. And bring them
he's
on
expected to be sentenced on March 7th. And apparently the guy that was attacked was working as a chef in the U.S. and his wife was working as a home care attendant when they both lost their jobs during the pandemic shutdown. That's when they began collecting cans and bottles to return for refunds so that they could pay that money for rent. So that's a whole lot of cans you got to collect to get some rent money.
Yeah, I would suggest you do a different line of work, but that's it.
I mean, that's a whole lot of cans you got to collect to
is that the Jared Powell we're talking about?
I don't know.
Yeah, it looks that way. It says he was charged with 2 counts of felony assault. By the way, Jerome, this is not a good idea. Okay, you really need to find another line of work. You could be on television or something like that. But this line of work is not going to work for you. I can tell you that.
Right. I want to answer your
question. Join the Wagner Group.
It's a bad deal.
Is this a problem? Well, define a problem. People are being caught for targeting other people because of their race. They're getting arrested, they're being prosecuted, and they're being jailed. What else would you like government to do for you?
I'm just asking whether hate crimes, because sometimes if a group is, it's that great boogeyman theory, Shaquille. If there is a group that is perceived as being the problem, then folks will target them. I imagine that we have heard on this show several people that we've heard 2 groups of folks. And I'm sorry, I'm going to come after both of y'all. We've heard 2 folks that say that they do not have a great deal of respect, and I get it to some degree. I definitely get it from Sasha's standpoint because he's from Ukraine and everything. So I can understand why he would not like, because if you hear Sasha say it a lot of times, I don't think that there's a Russian living that Sasha likes or everything in that space. And I would say the same thing about the French and Chris and everything. Now I don't get you, Chris, because I don't understand this hatred of France and everything.
I get it.
You got, but
it's not really a hatred. It's really, really a strong dislike.
Okay, but Mark, I don't think you're being.
Yeah, I think you're entitled to a strong dislike, but you're not entitled.
Mark, I don't think you're being fair and reasonable in
Chris can have a strong dislike
to other hate crimes. Okay. If Sasha feels some animosity towards Russians because they're invading his country, you can understand that.
I can totally understand that.
If Lieutenant Colonel Chris Greco has some issues because he doesn't particularly like the way the French military has operated and some of the things that they've done and that he's experienced, well, you can understand that, right? Well, we're talking about hate crimes in the United States where a person or a group of people go and attack somebody because of their sexuality, their skin color, their gender, whatever, where a group of people are systematically oppressed. And you know what? We've seen this all through American and Western history, right? The Irish, the Catholics were oppressed. There was the Irish people, they were oppressed for a while. Then there was, everyone got ganged up on the Greeks and Italians, then it was the Chinese for a while, Polish. Right? Then it was Muslims for a bit. Then it became Indians and Pakistanis for a bit. And now it's back to white people again.
But it's not just white people. That's what I'm just saying. Because
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
No, it's not. No, hold on a second, Shaquille.
Why do everyone wants to attack white people today?
No,
right?
Shaquille.
So this will pass. That's the thing. This will pass. And all of a sudden, the next group will come in, and I will say about the next group, what I say about this current group that's being oppressed. Leave them alone. Let's live in peace. Let's treat everyone equally.
You really.
But speaking of, but hold on a second, Shaquille. Speaking of leaving people alone and everything, I'm actually gonna come to your neck of the woods as well, if you're part of your heritage, because apparently, and Dan, you're gonna love this because you're a Republican, Chris. You're gonna love this as well. But there is a woman that is seeking the chairmanship of the Republican National Committee, and apparently, a lot of opponents are raising concerns because she is a Sikh. She is a Sikh of faith and everything. So there are a lot of folks that are saying, can we have her as our head because of her Sikh faith and all?
So she's a seeking.
Well, she's seeking
How is that coming to my neck of the woods? In what way is that?
We talked before that you have.
No. But in what way? I've said so many times, I'm not from India. My family, generations ago, were from India. So if you don't judge me by my skin color, okay, and you don't judge me because of the ethnicity that my forefathers had 200 years ago, I don't know anything about India. I don't really know what Sikhs believe, for example.
Your grandparents did 500 million years ago.
But hold on a second.
Shaquille, just a second.
Hold on. I was just saying that because of your family heritage, you said you have family that is Muslim. I didn't say you per se. I said you said you had family that are Muslim and that are different faiths and all of that. That's all I was saying when I said your neck of the woods. I was talking about the family heritage. I did not say you per se, but I said your.
Well, you said my neck of the woods.
I was talking about the family heritage, and you have said your family. You even said that you have Amans in your family. So that's all I was saying. So I was talking about the overall history.
Chris,
I'm not offended. I'm not offended. I'm not upset. I'm just trying to point out to you. I'm just trying to point out to
the
you
Catholics
that what you just did to me, if somebody did that to you and assumed something about you because you're African American, you'd get all upset about it and be like, how could they do that? They're assuming my skin color, blah, 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 and we wouldn't hear the end of it. But when you do it to me, even if it's not deliberate, you do it to me, I'll normally just wear it. And that's the thing. You don't see how bringing race and all these different things into everything, it's just divisive unnecessarily.
But hold on a second, because I wasn't even going to the race thing or the rice thing, as Chris likes to call it. I was actually bringing up religion and all, because actually the RNC chairman and everything, who is Miss McDaniels, I believe, or is it Mr. McDaniels? And I'm trying to find their name. Ronna McDaniels said that they wholeheartedly condemned religious bigotry in any form, and they actually came to both Nick and Dan's history and everything, because apparently Ronna is a member of the Mormon church, because they said we are a party of faith, family, and freedom, and those attacks have no place in our party or our politics, McDaniel said in a statement to Politico. As a member of a minority faith myself, I would never condone such attacks. I have vowed to run a positive campaign and will continue to do so. And apparently McDaniel is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That doesn't lend any extra credibility because they're a member of a minority faith. I'm not a Christian. I still stand up for Christians. Well, what's the difference? I mean, you don't need to be a member of some oppressed group in order to have a little bit more thing. And you know what, Mark? If you think otherwise, may I suggest you go back to the CCB Plaza? I looked it up. What is it? A shopping center? Go back up there, occupy Durham, see if you can achieve more than Medea.
No, CCPC Plaza is actually it actually had a different name, because some of the folks that were involved in Occupy decided to call it Freedom Plaza and gave it a different other name. But yeah, it's right there in the downtown area. It's not been going on in a while.
Did you achieve at that shopping mall what you were trying to achieve? It wasn't
a shopping mall. It was actually a area in the middle of downtown and all that. But some of the things that we talked about, which is some of the things that I brought up in the past, which is some of the points that we were trying to deal with things around housing. Yes, we did make some changes in housing. Yes, some of the things that we were looking at were addressed and dealt with by the city council or other folks. So there were some people even in the city council.
Directly as a result of you
going.
Yeah,
because there were people in the city council that were involved in Occupy at that time. And actually, one of them actually got
if they're part of the city council, what are they doing in the Occupy movement? They're part of the council. Go change the stuff.
Well, like I said, they actually got into the council. They actually got into the council after they did Occupy. So they decided to run for political office.
Occupying my own house. I'm like, geez. Hold
on a second, because I was going to get to one other thing which is similar, and then I was going to leave it alone, because apparently, and then we get ready to wind down very shortly, but apparently coming back to the Republican and Democratic fights and everything, there was a candidate that was floating an idea. It comes back to you, Shaquille, and climate change. And it was apparently only floating the idea, but folks took it quite literally and all of that, because they just floated this idea of putting a ban on gas stoves. I actually have, I think this is a gas stove, and it definitely, I love my stove and all of that, but they put that as a ban, floated it as an idea, and then the Republicans jumped down their throat and everything. Because
not just the Republicans.
Huh?
Not just the Republicans jumped down their throat. Anyone with brains.
Well, Richard Trump Jr., a Biden nominee who joined the commission, said he was just floating the fact that a ban on gas stoves should be on the table. He said products that can't be made.
Did he say why? He said there was a connection between gas stoves and autism.
There are some studies that it actually
gas stoves and autism.
Your chances to have asthma about 30%.
There's a link between anything and anything if they manipulate the data for it. Mark.
Well, hold on a second. Representative Ronnie Jansen of Texas, a former presidential physician, said, "I'll never give up my gas stove. If the maniacs in the White House come for my stove, they can pry it from my cold, dead hands."
That would be a
Nikki Haley must have been hanging out at NRA rallies. Let me say something to you,
Hold on a
Mark.
second. Nikki Haley, who
Let
I
me
actually
answer
support. Nikki Haley, who I actually am a fan of and everything, said first the liberals came for our light bulbs, and then they came for our cars. Now they're coming for our stoves.
That's right.
And in New York, they came for our sodas.
Rather than go through that craziness, what they should do is disclose the problems of gas stoves so people are aware of them. And there's some studies out there.
If there are, yeah.
Asthma 30%. Now, whether those studies are valid or not, I don't know. But there are studies out there, so they do have some side effects.
In comparison to what? Because
compared to electric stoves,
prior to gas stoves, what were we doing?
Which also might have their downsides.
I've had gas stoves and electric stoves.
Do you want to go to Africa and ask them whether they would prefer gas stoves over?
No, we're not in Africa. We're talking about the United States of America.
We're
not talking about.
Let me answer Mark. Hey Mark, here's my suggestion, because I know how much you love government, being the good old lefty that you are, right?
Yeah.
If you look at your government and mine and all the other governments, and you look over the decades how they haven't been able to solve the housing crisis, they haven't been able to solve healthcare issues, they haven't been able to solve the finance issues, inequality, education, infrastructure, they haven't been able to fix any of that. May I suggest that those politicians stay out of my bedroom, they stay out of my kitchen, they stay out of my house, they stay out of my car.
We're going to replace your bloody
business. Right, the people built your house. It's in Washington D.C. Stay there. Get the hell away from me.
Yeah, we're gonna replace your bloody stove. So deal with it, mate.
Okay, so
you're gonna have an electric stove whether you like it or not, and it's gonna be run off of solar power, clean energy, whether you like it or not.
And Nick, are they going to take away the fireplaces also?
Made in China. Yeah,
Chris, you had a thought?
Get rid of your
the study that has been linked by the federal government and everything else is a study that was done by the American Chemical Society back in 2022. And what they did was, and I'm going to find it here in a second, is that basically they measured 53 stoves. There's 40 million people right now that have gas stoves. 35% of the United States has gas stoves. 35%. So it's not even 50%. So 40 million stoves out there, they did 50 some. And they said, of those 50 stoves we measured, this type of problem. 53 homes in 7 California countries. Okay, so 53 homes in 7 California counties between January 2020 and May 2021. That's it. 53 homes, 7 California counties. That's it. There's 50 states here, folks. I mean,
and how old were the stoves they looked at?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's see what the table shows. So I mean, this is. I mean, here's how they did the testing. Experimental setup in the kitchen. I mean, look at you have plastic, because everyone has plastic in their kitchen. So I think that's
where's the windows? Where's the windows and exhaust?
There's no windows here. Well, it's covered by the plastic, Lee. Come on. So then they have that.
I mean, we're winding down, and we can bring this up on tomorrow and everything.
Sorry,
actually, hold on a second, because this is actually you, Shaquille, as we get ready to wind down.
Idea as to where you were approached. Is this you guys? Is that your lot there? sit in there in CCB Plaza?
That was probably my lot back in the day. I don't know whether I was in that picture or not, but we'll see if I was. We were also doing the whole Honduras thing and everything in that space. But hold on a second. But my question I was going to get to, and all in that line is, there has been an issue because we talk a lot of times, and I know that next week we've got. Hold on, because I know next week we've got another edition of the Black Business Olympics. I think that me and Nick may be seeing Eric Kelly later on this afternoon, and all in that space, but. One of the industries that has been actually getting a lot of support in the business community is actually in the sense of oil and energy and renewable energy creation companies and all in that space. And actually President Joe Biden and Northeastern governors have sold offshore wind as a way to green the power sector and create jobs, particularly in communities of color that have been overburdened by pollution and everything. And there have been a number of companies that are African-American run.
So what about communities that aren't of color that have been overrun by pollution? Do they get the jobs as well?
Care about
no. Forget
we
that.
don't care about those ones.
But there are one of the things that is being is that there are some African American entrepreneurs that are actually creating jobs in those fields, and that is one of the things that the folks are.
Nothing's holding them back.
There's also white people,
Latino and Asian people who work in the wind industry.
White people
that their number in the national workforce. Black people, by contrast, account for 7% of the workforce in 2020.
He doesn't care about
white people out there. We're past the hour. We got to go. Industry, do they get to say, "Hey, look, I'm only going to focus my efforts on white areas"? Do they get to say that?
One-way street, dude.
No.
Evidently.
Like I said, well, I'm going to bring a couple of them on the show because I'm trying to find something that have actually bought some of those companies and all in that space. But it is time for us to get out of here, and we'll bring them on next week, or hopefully.